Chapter 6 Kidnapped. The events just narrated occurred in the prime of my life and are partly matters of publicity. My attempted breach of faith in the way of disclosing their secrets was naturally infamous in the eyes of my society brethren, who endeavored to prevail upon me to relent on my design, which, after writing my confession, I made no endeavor to conceal. Their importunities and threatenings had generally been resisted. However, and with an obliquity that cannot be easily explained, I persisted in my unreasonable design. I was blessed as a husband and father, but neither the thought of a home, wife, nor child checked me in my inexplicable course. I was certainly irresponsible, perhaps a monomaniac, and yet on the subject in which I was absorbed, I preserved my mental equipoise and knowingly followed a course that finally brought me into the deepest slough of trouble and lost to me forever all that man loves most dearly. An overruling spirit, perhaps the shade of one of the old alchemists, possessed me, and in the face of obstacles that would have caused most men to reflect and retrace their steps, I madly rushed onward. The influence that impelled me, whatever it may have been, was irresistible. I apparently acted the part of agent, subject to an ever-present master essence, and under this dominating spirit or demon my mind was powerless in its subjection. My soul was driven imperiously by that impelling and indescribable something, and was as passive and irresponsible as lycopodium that is borne onward in a steady current of air. Methods were vainly sought by those who loved me, brethren of the lodge, and others who endeavored to induce me to change my headstrong purpose, but I could not neither accept their counsels nor heed their forebodings. Summons by law was served on me in order to disconcert me, and my numerous small debts became the pretext for legal warrants, until at last all my papers, excepting my confession and my person also, were seized upon an execution served by a constable. Minor claims were quickly satisfied, but when I regained my liberty, the aggression continued. Even arson was resorted to, and the printing office that held my manuscript was fired one night, that the obnoxious revelation which I persisted in putting into print might be destroyed. Finally, I found myself separated by process of law from home and friends, an inmate of a jail. My opponents, as I now came to consider them, had confined me in prison for a debt of only $2, a sufficient amount at that time, in that state, for my incarceration. Smarting under the humiliation, my spirit became still more rebellious, and I now, perhaps justly, came to view myself as a martyr. It had been at first asserted that I had stolen a shirt, but I was not afraid of any penalty that could be laid on me for this trumped-up charge, believing that the imputation and the arrest would be shown to be designed as willful oppression. Therefore it was that when this contemptible arraignment had been swept aside and I was freed before a justice of the peace, I experienced more than a little surprise at a rearrest and at finding myself again thrown into jail. I knew that it had been decreed by my brethren that I must retract and destroy my confession, and this fact made me the more determined to prevent its destruction, and I persisted sullenly in pursuing my course. On the evening of August 12, 1826, my jailer's wife informed me that the debt for which I had been incarcerated had been paid by unknown friends, and that I could depart, and I accepted the statement without question. Upon my stepping from the door of the jail, however, my arms were firmly grasped by two persons, one on each side of me, and before I could realize the fact that I was being kidnapped, I was thrust into a closed coach which immediately rolled away, but not until I made an outcry which, if heard by anyone, was unheeded. "For your own sake be quiet," said one of my companions in confinement, for the carriage was draped to exclude the light, and was as dark as a dungeon. My spirit rebelled. I felt that I was on the brink of a remarkable, perhaps perilous experience, and I indignantly replied by saying, "What have I done that you should presume forcibly to imprison me? Am I not a free man of America?" "What have you done?" he answered. "Have you not bound yourself by a series of vows that are sacred and should be inviolable? and have you not broken them, as no other man has done before you? Have you not betrayed your trust and merited a severe judgment? Did you not voluntarily ask admission into our ancient brotherhood, and in good faith were you not initiated into our sacred mysteries? Did you not obligate yourself before man, and in our sacred honor promise to preserve our secrets? I did, I replied, but previously I had sworn before a higher tribunal to scatter this precious wisdom to the world. Yes, he said, and you know full well the depth of the self-sought solemn oath that you took with us, more solemn than that prescribed by any open court on earth. This I do not deny, I said, and yet I am glad that I accomplished my object, even though you have now, as is evident, the power to pronounce my sentence. You should look for the death sentence, was the reply, but it has been ordained instead that you are to be given a lengthened life. You should expect bodily destruction, but on the contrary, you will pass on in consciousness of earth and earthly concerns when we are gone. Your name will be known to all lands, and yet from this time you will be unknown. For the welfare of future humanity, you will be thrust into a height in our order that will annihilate you as a mortal being, and yet you will exist, suspended between life and death, and in the intermediate state will know that you exist. You have, as you confess, merited a severe punishment, but you can only punish in accordance with an unwritten law that instructs the person punished and elevates the human race in consequence. You stand alone among mortals in that you have openly attempted to give broadly to those who have not earned it our most sacred property, a property that did not belong to you, property that you have only been permitted to handle, that has been handed from man to man from before the time of Solomon, and which belongs to no one man, and will continue to pass in this way from one to another as a hallowed trust until there are no men, as men now exist, to receive it. You will soon go into the shadows of darkness and will learn many of the mysteries of life, the undeveloped mysteries that are withheld from your fellows, by which you, who have been so presumptuous and anxious for knowledge, are destined to possess and solve. You will find secrets that man, as man is now constituted, can now not yet discover, and yet which the future man must gain and be instructed in. As you have sowed, so shall you reap. You wish to become a distributor of knowledge. You shall now by bodily trial and mental suffering obtain unsought knowledge to distribute, and in time to come you will be commanded to make your discoveries known. As your pathway is surely laid out, so must you walk. It is ordained to rebel is useless. Who has pronounced this sentence? I asked. A judge neither of heaven nor of earth. You speak in enigmas. No, I speak openly and the truth. Our brotherhood is linked with the past and clasps hands with the antediluvians. The flood scattered the races of earth, but did not distribute our secrets. The great love of wisdom has from generation to generation led selected members of our organization to depths of study that our open work does not touch upon, and behind our highest officers there stand, in the occult shades between the here and the hereafter, unknown and unseen agents who are initiated into secrets above and beyond those known to their ordinary craft. Those who are introduced into these inner recesses acquire superhuman conceptions and do not give an open sign of fellowship. They need no talisman. They walk our streets possessed of powers unknown to men. They concern themselves as mortals in the affairs of men, and even their brethren of the initiated, open order, are unaware of their exalted condition. The means by which they have been instructed, their several individualities as well, have been concealed, because publicity would destroy their value and injure humanity's cause. Silence followed these vague disclosures, and the carriage rolled on. I was mystified and alarmed, and yet I knew that whatever might be the end of this nocturnal ride, I had invited it, yes, merited it, and I steeled myself to hear the sentence of my judges, in whose hands I was powerless. The pursers on the seat opposite me continued their conversation in low tones, audible only to themselves. An individual by my side neither moved nor spoke. There were four of us in the carriage, as I learned intuitively, although we were surrounded by utter darkness. At length I addressed the companion beside me, for the silence was unbearable. Friend or enemy, though he might be, anything rather than this long silence. How long shall we continue in this carriage? He made no reply. After a time, I again spoke. Can you not tell me, comrade, how long our journey will last? When shall we reach our destination? Silence only. Putting out my hand, I ventured to touch my mate, and found that he was tightly strapped, bound upright to the seat and the back of the carriage. Leather thongs held him firmly in position, and as I pondered over the mystery, I thought to myself, if I make a disturbance, they will not hesitate to manacle me as securely. My custodians seemed, however, not to exercise a guard over me, and yet I felt that they were certain of my inability to escape. If the man on the seat was a prisoner, why was he so reticent? Why did he not answer my questions? I came to the conclusion that he must be gagged as well as bound. Then I determined to find out if this were so. I began to realize more forcibly that a terrible sentence must have been meted out, and I half hoped that I could get from my partner in captivity some information regarding our destination. Sliding my hand cautiously along his chest and under his chin, I intended to remove the gag from his mouth, when I felt my flesh creep, for it came in contact with the cold, rigid flesh of a corpse. The man was dead and stiff. Fail upon me to relent on my design, which, after writing my confession, I made no endeavor to conceal. Their importunities and threatenings had generally been resisted. However, and with an obliquity that cannot be easily explained, I persisted in my unreasonable design. Caused most men to reflect and retrace their steps, I madly rushed onward. The influence that impelled me, whatever it may have been, was irresistible. I apparently acted the part of agent, subject to an ever-present master essence, and under this equipoise, and knowingly followed a course that finally brought me into the deepest slough of trouble, and lost to me forever all that man loves most dearly. An overruling spirit, perhaps the shade of one of the old alchemists, possessed me, and in the face of obstacles that would have... Chapter 6. Kidnapped. The events just narrated occurred in the prime of my life and are partly matters of publicity. My attempted breach of faith in the way of disclosing their secrets was naturally infamous in the eyes of my society brethren, who endeavored to prevent. I was blessed as a husband and father, but neither the thought of a home, wife, nor child checked me in my inexplicable course. I was certainly irresponsible, perhaps a monomaniac, and yet on the subject in which I was absorbed, I preserved my mental